The third part of the innovation ecosystem is the engine. This is the nuts and bolts, the structures and processes that you need to put in place in an organization that protects innovation and make sure that you can carry on running the day-to-day business, but there is a space for innovation within there as well. Because if you don't put some structure and some space within there, then it will always, someone's priorities will always be what they're drawn to in their day job. So before I go into a bit of detail around this, I want to just talk about Chief Innovation Officers. I know I've got some heads of innovation in the room, so I'll be careful. Chief Innovation Officers. So we have met a number of Chief Innovation Officers around, over the last 10 years, and they're more and more coming part of appearing in organisations. They kind of come in a couple of shapes and sizes. Those times it doesn't work is when the Chief Innovation Officer is responsible for innovation. And innovation can only go through her or him. And if it's not done by, if it's not done by Molly or by Patrick, then it's not innovation. So those people and we've been in meetings where innovation managers and innovation directors will look at what's happened in the business in the last year and then kind of retrospectively fit it into their world, and they will own and claim that as part of their innovation program. Or stuff gets killed because so-and-so, Molly, the innovation manager, doesn't think it's a goer, and therefore that particular spark, that creative potential, is killed in the organisation. We've also seen innovation managers who don't have any budget. And it's a real temptation to have a senior person appointed to innovation and then give them no money at all. And what they are reduced, Nesta's nodding, what they're reduced to doing is they sort of just wander around the organisation with post-it notes, desperately trying to, look a bit like, can I look a bit like Google, or trying to run a brainstorm. It doesn't work. Those chief innovation officers, innovation managers, innovation directors, whatever they are, you need to give them some money, and you also need to let them light fires across the organisation. So they don't own innovation at all. They just light the fire, and the rest of the organisation then takes it with them. Alongside that, so we've had some really interesting conversations with innovation managers around metrics. Business as usual metrics very rarely work in innovation. It's really, Christian Claytonson talks a lot about this in The Innovator's Dilemma. Often large organisations fail to spot there's something that will then disrupt their industry later on. Because when it initially appears in the market as a nascent idea or a nascent proposition, it isn't giving enough ROI. So it gets rejected. We're not going to pay any attention to that because it's so small, it doesn't fit with our strategy, it's not worth the investment. And before long, you find that that small startup actually begins to disrupt your market. So using the metrics by which you will measure success in everyday business don't work in innovation. And every business will be different. There's a different conversation that we can have with you around what metrics are right for innovation in my business, but a couple of examples of clients we work with, it might be around percentage of new and different products in your portfolio pipeline. It might be around percentage of new customers using new products, whatever it might be, whatever's right for you. But if you are measuring it on what you measure your everyday business on, it will never return what you want, and you will always kill innovation. A couple of examples of organisations who've got the structures and processes in place to make sure that they are continually innovative. I was fortunate enough to spend time in Cincinnati with Procter & Gamble, and their iconic Connect and Develop program. So they were originally known as kind of Kremlin on the Ohio by their suppliers. No one wanted to work with Procter & Gamble. And AJ Lafferty was an incredibly forward-thinking CEO, and he said 50% of our innovations must come from outside the business. And their innovation team talk about celebrating not invented here, which I absolutely love, a completely different mindset. And what they do at Procter & Gamble through Connect and Develop is they push out across the world their 3 or 4 strategic platforms that they're working on over the year. And then they invite inventors, innovators, creators, they invite people to give them ideas on how we can go about solving it. They reckon they've got over 1.7 million people working for them who don't actually get paid by Procter & Gamble. All of those non-employee workforce working on your ideas, they invented crowdsourcing basically. Or you can do what Unilever have done. So they with Founders Factory, where they've got in on the ground, they've supported startups. I went to a big session on innovation there recently in their Singapore office, and they had always different kind of technical companies in. They had 3D printer companies, they had life expectancy companies, they had food delivery companies, all different types of businesses, small startups. They know they're a big tanker. They know it takes time for things to get through their organization, but they could spot stuff out there that's happening in the startup community, support it, and get in early on the ground, which is what Barclays are doing with Rise. So Rise started off as a bit of an accelerator over in the East End of London on Mile End Road. It's now in very fancy, swanky offices just by Liverpool Street Station. And basically it's a 12-week program that supports startup companies. They take them through a process to give them some structure and some process, some legal guidance, kind of scale the product rather than prove the product, which is what you might do in incubator. So accelerator over 12 weeks, scale, sees, has this product got scale? Is it investable in? And they get them ready for a round of VC funding. But what they also do is they take some equity stake in some of that business as well. So there's a bit of commercial aspect to it. They use their mentors, they use their management in the business to mentor people. So maybe some plateaued managers, maybe people that have, a couple of you tonight said, I've got a real personal interest in innovation. They will put you there to start mentoring these startups. So a relationship is formed there. And they're also seeing what's happening right at grassroots level in the fintech community and how can they get some of that within their business. And I love what Hasbro have done. So actually, the gaming industry, or the children's games, was one of the most antiquated industries I'd ever heard of when we started looking at it originally. So they used to basically have, somebody would come up with an idea, you might invent a fantastic new game, which would be great for Christmas. You'd then need to go to a games broker, and then she would need to go to you, to Hasbro, to then pitch the game, and publishing's up for trouble, isn't it? Book publishing, eventually. But so there was always this kind of middleman, and you had all the power, you had none, you weren't getting everything. So they said, you know what, digital and offices a completely new opportunity. They completely did away with it. They just set up their gaming lab online. They set up the next great game challenge. And then they picked particular communities that they thought would be more innovative and more creative. So they went after the gamers, the Xbox players. They went for particular community groups and said, bring us your ideas straight to us. And then when the ideas were put forward, they put them on a crowdfunding platform and said, would you put some money behind this? And those who got the most number of votes were then brought to Hasbro and then incubated and given some money and seen where they can grow. So they were constantly using the crowd and disrupting the old methodology of getting games to them. So the engine, the structures and processes, it's about thinking about what metrics are right in my business to measure innovation. It's about saying innovation is not just the responsibility of the innovation manager or the chief innovation officer, it's everyone's responsibility. There are different structures you can put in place to make sure that ideas in your business bubble up through the organization. And the fourth bit is around looking outside, partnering, finding parallel worlds, finding new stimulus, finding those startups, finding different places to go and get fresh views and fresh attitudes towards the challenge that you particularly have.